a glass of my finest tap water. Wait, hold on. I haven't put my art up yet, so give you something to look at. Okay. Hey y'all, it's Peter. Thought I'd do something a little bit different today. So I've been documenting my ideas and thoughts for a while now, maybe more formally for probably the last 10 months. And I was recently reflecting on some of the things that I've learned and been thinking about recently, and kind of realized that some of them have really been big changes in my perspective. And so I got kind of curious and wanted to document them a little bit more formally, and thought I would make a video to share it with you in case you get some value out of it. Before we get into it, I do want to say that I feel like, in 5 or 10 years, I may look back on this and think, what was he thinking? But I wanted to document my perspective right now, today, this past year, based on my experiences. And, I think everyone needs different nudges at different times in their life. So feel free to take, whatever resonates with you and, disregard what doesn't. Number 1, play the long game. Play the long game means shifting your time horizon and looking at your own personal growth on the scale of months and years rather than days or weeks. It means being okay with just taking small steps or incremental progress, as well as shifting your expectations on these ideas of taking big leaps in growth. I think these images from Visualize Value on Twitter do a really good job of getting this point across. Your days may have ups and downs, but over time, the highs get higher and the lows also get higher. As soon as you lengthen your time horizon, the little ups and downs in your days don't really make much of a difference anymore. I'm not really sure where I developed these expectations, maybe in college, but I think I've had this kind of subconscious expectation that growth should happen in these big leaps. And, that worked well in college when I was being assessed and constantly learning new things every semester. And, I had deadlines and I had structure. But, once I graduated, I was left with reality. And this idea of not growing rapidly every semester felt uncomfortable. It didn't feel good for me. So graduating college was a big catalyst for me, as well as following Visualize Value on Twitter, highly recommend, as well as reading Atomic Habits by James Clear. I think I've kind of taken a step back and reset my expectations to think a little bit more long-term. An example of this is around last fall when I started to set personal goals. I had heard about the SMART framework, and so I tried to apply that for personal goals. And honestly, I think really does not do well for personal goals, but that's a story for another time. And over time, I kind of shifted to more creating systems and focusing on the process rather than a metric and a time and the stress that comes with that. So for example, one of my first goals was to post 31 times on Instagram. It had a metric, it had a time, it had a date by the end of the month. But over time, my goals started to shift into things like read for just 5 minutes every day. So focus more on the process. Another example of this was literally yesterday, I was talking to someone at a gym, and we had a little back and forth conversation, and it was a fine conversation, but I left kind of feeling like I should have said something differently, or I could have said something differently. And I was kind of beating myself up about that, and kind of reminded myself of this lesson, of this learning, of playing the long game. Play the long game, incremental progress. Each time I'll get better and better at the little small talk that I usually hate. But, I'm proud of myself for even having that conversation in the first place. And if I look back in my past, that's a growth moment compared to that. So all that being said, I still don't know, what my life looks like in 6 or 12 months. I think this idea is less about planning your life and more about reducing the kind of mental stress, and it's more about the day-to-day and focused on the incremental progress. Number 2, expose yourself to more things. Honestly, I had trouble distilling this one down to one thing because I think I've applied it to a couple different things in different areas, and those are, one is acquiring knowledge or seeking truth. One is having experiences, and then another is in terms of like finding your interests and finding your passions. In terms of knowledge, the more that you're exposed to, the more that you have going on in your brain, the easier it is to form ideas, generate new connections between ideas. If you're only exposed to this many things, you can only generate so many ideas. But if you expose yourself to more, you have more opportunities to understand things in different ways. In terms of experiences, this is just a matter of being exposed to novel experiences and learning from different people and perspectives and cultures and different ways of life. I think that leads to a more rich life in general. And in terms of finding your passion, I can't speak from experience yet, but the idea here is to expose yourself to try as many things as possible. The more that you try, the more that you know what is something that you're interested in and what is something that you're not. My silly example is, what if I'm destined to be, a scuba diving instructor? Like totally out there. But it's like, I will never know until I try. So the idea is try as many things as possible, and the more things that you try, the more that you know, I'll never know if I want to be a scuba diving instructor. I don't think there was a single moment that I learned this, more of a slow creep of watching a lot of, travel videos, travel experiences, as well as something that, Gary Vee says is,
and if you don't know what that thing is, you go and taste. You take a cooking class, you go skiing, you try shit.
So more recently, I've been reading a lot more books, trying to open my scope of what I'm reading about. I've been trying to be more aware of keeping an open mind to new ideas. That's one of those things that, the initial instinct is to get defensive of some, idea that is different than what you believe in. But, something that I've noticed is, I may get defensive at first, but maybe like later that day or the next day, I appreciate the other viewpoint. And I think that's, a really healthy way to acquire knowledge and learn. Number 3, a strong why is necessary. This might be specific to me, but I've come to realize that I personally really need a strong why, a strong reason why I'm doing something. It's just like the foundation of a house. It's easier to fix weak support beams or weak, 2x4s than it is to fix a cracking, weak foundation. If I don't have a strong why, I lose that mental motivation. But if I have that strong foundation, I just feel like I'm capable of so much more, and there's nothing that gets in the way of what I'm doing. And another thing is, for me, I've learned that I think I just need to keep reminding myself of that why, of that motivation. And if it's a strong why, then that helps keep me going forward. I'm not sure I had a different belief in the past, but I think this is something that I've just kind of learned from the past 5 years of experiences, whether that's through projects, activities, jobs. There have been times when I've had a strong foundation and it felt good, it felt healthy, it felt, strong. And there were other times when, the why was okay, or it was, a different reason, and things kind of deteriorated over time. I've done a lot of, soul searching in the past year. I feel like I'm in a constant state of soul searching to kind of figure out what makes me tick, what I value, what kind of direction is best for me. And I finally sat down a couple months ago and went through the exercise of finding your core values, and that was something that kind of helped open my eyes to what things I'm doing that match some of my core values, and what are the things that I'm doing that kind of don't match. And it was really interesting to kind of compare those two. So I'm still figuring out, my whys, my values. I'm sure that they will still mold and develop over time. But even having a general idea, even taking that first step, has been really helpful for me to kind of understand how I work and what I need to be motivated and capable of more. Number 4, service is the answer. Being of service is the answer to happiness and fulfillment. That using your interests, your skills, your passions to help other people is the answer that you're looking for. This is something that I learned and read about from Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty, which I will get here. He writes in the book that the highest purpose is to live in service, and that selflessness is the surest route to inner peace and a meaningful life. He also writes that the Bhagavad Gita sees the whole world as a kind of school, an education system structured to make us realize one truth, that we are compelled to serve, and only in service can we be happy. And I'll just read one more passage here. He says that just as Mandela believed people were born to love but taught to hate, monks believe that we are born to serve, but the distractions of the external world make us forget our purpose. So I found this really interesting. I feel like I've always kind of tended towards enjoying helping people and feeling good about helping others. But it was really eye-opening for me to read it so clearly defined from someone that, the monks that study the mind for their entire lives. And so since reading this, I've kind of been more aware of those moments where I have an opportunity to help someone, no matter how small or big, and realize that those are kind of the moments that fit into the larger picture of my life. And in terms of the future, I've started thinking about this idea kind of as a grounding point that I can incorporate and kind of work around in terms of creating my future. Number 5, discomfort is a requirement for growth. This feels so obvious to say, but it was such an enlightening moment when it finally clicked for me, which reminds me of another learning that I've had. So bonus number 6 here is that recognizing an idea and truly understanding it are totally different things. You can hear an idea, 50,000 times and recognize it and think, oh yeah, this person said this, yeah, I totally get it. But only until you actually apply it and understand it to your own life and in a situation that you encounter, does it actually matter. So anyways, it finally clicked for me that discomfort is a prerequisite for growth. It is required. It has to exist for growth to occur. And you can't have growth without discomfort. They go hand in hand. Discomfort, being uncomfortable is not pleasant in the moment, but each experience, each moment stretches your comfort zone just a little bit and gives you a new perspective. And that stretching of your comfort zone means that you can adapt to new environments, new situations. You could be exposed to different cultures and opportunities and have richer experiences in life. I never really put this together so concisely or clearly until fairly recently. I think thinking back on the past maybe year and a half, I think I've tried pushing my comfort zone in little ways, but I feel like overall my comfort zone has shrunk, which for me at a high level is not really the direction I want to go. I think I've just been more focused on finding things that I enjoy, interests, passion, rather than personal growth and developing a stronger mind. I've heard the sayings, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, do what excites, seek discomfort, but the connection for me to personal growth in my life is what made this click for me and what helped me so much. I think the biggest catalyst for me was hearing so many people from YouTube channels come to the same conclusion, as well as listening to Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins most recently. Now, I haven't done anything crazy like go skydiving or scuba diving, but I've started to view those smaller moments in my life, like just getting out of the apartment, running just a little bit longer, going to that happy hour, and viewing the discomfort of those situations as positive and good, and that I'm growing, rather than the feeling of discomfort that feels negative. Now, I believe, and here's bonus lesson number 7, that the most effective change comes from changing your identity, which is an idea from Atomic Habits by James Clear. He writes that true behavior change is identity change. You might start a habit because of motivation, but the only reason you'll stick with one is that it becomes part of your identity. And just like my first learning, play the long game, this is just the beginning. I'm not expecting leaps of growth. I'm okay with incremental progress and viewing each little moment, each little experience of pushing my comfort zone, being uncomfortable, as growth and positive change. So to recap, in the past about year or so, these 5 learnings for me have really changed my perspective. Play the long game, expose yourself to more things. A strong why is necessary. Service is the answer, and discomfort is a requirement for growth. Hopefully you got some value out of this. I'm sure in the years to come I'll have many different learnings and lessons, and I hope to document and share those with you in the future. But until next time, peace.